All right, welcome to another episode of I Guess I'll Do It with Pat House, a comedians podcast where I talk to comedians about their first set and their early days in stand-up. Today, I have a guest who I'm very excited to have because I was a fan of his before I was even doing stand-up. Today, I have Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg, thank you for being here.
Pat, it's a pleasure. I always enjoy seeing you in Philly. And, we go out after shows and we do crazy things with the fans.
Just chaos. Just fucking raising hell everywhere we go.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if I told you in person or not. It's because it's so far out the window. But you really were one of my favorite comics when I was in high school because I was obsessed with Comedy Central Presents, and I loved yours. I fucking loved your John Glenn joke where you said you're not even a fan of old people driving. And then you're like, John, your turn signal's been on for 24,000 miles. Me and my friends laughed our balls off at that. And then, I've been a fan ever since then. And then I started doing stand-up, and you came through Philly. And when Helium first opened in Philly, I was just watching stand-up there every single night. And it was so awesome when guys like you and Attell and Laurie Kilmartin and Greg Giraldo came through. So you were like a big part of me becoming a comic in the beginning.
Wow, that's really nice to hear, man. I'm glad that somehow my, those early stand-up specials on Comedy Central were really pretty raw. They didn't give you notes. They didn't go over your set beforehand. Comedy Central was pretty good about just go do it. And the first batch, I think I did the very first season of Comedy Central Presents, and it was Mitch Hedberg and me and Wanda Sykes. And
on the same night, you guys all taped on the same. Oh, that's a
and we were all staying at the Roosevelt Hotel in these cabanas, and we had a party in Mitch's room and emptied out his minibar. And I had never met him before, and I was just like, I hadn't even seen a stand-up, and so we hung out all night. And I was like, wow, this is the fucking coolest guy I've ever met. He's just so smart and kind of like artistic, and then I saw his set the next night. And he fucking bombed. He did so bad that he literally just stopped and he goes, "Can I retape it?" And
didn't he like sit down in defeat?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It was bad. And I didn't even realize how good he was until after that.
Oh, I didn't know you were there that same exact night. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I've seen that set, man. He is fucking eating it.
Yeah. He eats it hard, and I don't think it hurt him, though. I think he managed to pick himself up after that.
No. Do you still keep in touch with Wanda? She actually lives in my parents' neighborhood.
I was with Mitch. I was going to be like, dude, sit down for a second.
I got some news for you.
Wanda and I are still friends. She actually had a show on Fox about maybe 6 years ago. She had a talk show, and she asked me to come on and write and produce on it. So we got to spend a lot of time together. And,
very cool.
Yeah, she's the coolest. I mean, she was struggling in New York for a long time before she made it. And when she did, everybody was just so happy for her because she'd really paid her dues,
Yeah, I've run into her once food shopping in my parents' neighborhood, and I was like, God damn it, I'm not even the most famous comic in ShopRite. When I think about working with you, I hosted for you and featured for you at in Philly at Helium and the Stress Factory. We worked together a handful of times. And I always think of this because you said something to me that I still think about. And this was like, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. Vinny's hosting. I come off stage in the middle spot and walk by you. And you just go, "You giant pussy." And I was like, what? And you go, "You giant fucking pussy." And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then you went on stage for an hour and did your set, leaving me to just sit with that for an hour. And then I'm sitting in the green room next to the Pac-Man machine, that tiny green room. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And you look right at me and you go to like, "Why are you doing the same jokes verbatim every night? You just wanted me to like try new stuff and expand more instead of like being a robot." But I love I loved how you let me just sit with that. And then you and I talked
Wow.
shop for a while,
What
but
a
you really
dick.
just, yeah, it was, but I kind of liked it.
Oh my God. Because I always do a thing where if I'm on the road or even if I'm in LA and the host, if I don't know the host and they introduce me as I walk up, you always say like, have fun or whatever to each other. And I always say to somebody I don't know, I'll go, thanks, faggot.
Yeah.
And then I just get up and do my set. And so I did this to this kid at the Laugh Factory. He was like a Persian guy, and he was a really sweet guy. And we always talk backstage, and we got to know each other a little bit. And then finally, he goes to me, he goes, "Hey man, I just got to ask you, did I do something to you? Like, did I like steal one of your jokes, or was I rude to you or disrespectful?" And I was like, "No, why?" He goes, "Why do you always call me faggot?" And I was like, "I'm just being a fucking comedian." That's why New York and LA are so different.
I absolutely.
Like, you can do that shit in New York. You can't do it in LA.
I feel like that's like a Northeast thing. I feel like that's Boston, New York, Philly stuff. Because you absolutely did that to me. You'd call me, I don't know, faggot, loser, shithead, something, whatever. But I remember every show you had a different one for me.
Yeah.
When I was hosting for you, like, have a good set, homo, or like whatever.
Right.
I do remember you giving me a heart attack because when I hosted for you the first time, that was probably my second or third time hosting ever. I'm like 2 or 3 years in, and I think I did like all my time up front. And then you're like, "Hey, can you do 5 in the middle?" And I was like, "Fuck," because I did like all my stuff. And then I think you went to dinner with friends in between shows, and you said something along the lines of like, "When I knock on the door, I'm ready." So I'm like floundering, doing crowd work, like begging for you to fucking knock on the door. And then I think I just did your intro and you came out. I was like, that's okay. Like, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
Oh my God. I really said that? I'll knock on the door when I'm ready?
Yeah, I think you just had to like pee and like just get yourself together for a second.
Yeah,
but I mean, but when you're new, like I probably did my best 15 up front, and I had like a shitty 5, which then became a shitty 2 because I hate doing a quick spot in the middle. I don't want to ruin the momentum. To this day, I have 3 albums. I still don't like doing 5 in the middle. I don't like it.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm not doing it anymore. So I'm going to call Greg Fitzsimmons' name, and he's either going to come out or he's not. But once I say his name, it's not my responsibility anymore.
That's hilarious.
Now, do you remember that?
It's always
from
fun.
The
Northeast, I just miss it. I was just back last week. I was in New York for a couple nights, and I ran around and did shows and saw comics that I haven't seen in a while. And I came back. So when I do sets in LA, I come home exhausted. And when I do sets in New York, I feel like jazz. I can't even go to sleep at night. It's just so much more exciting. It's so much more like, I don't know. It's just, I can't even put my finger on what's more alive about doing sets in the Northeast. If people expect obnoxiousness, they can take it. I just posted something on Instagram. Can you pull it up?
Yeah, is it the COVID cure?
No, I did. No, I just posted something like an hour ago.
Oh, okay. Hold on. I got my phone in my hand. I'm going right to Insta right now. Because I was going to bring up that joke that COVID cure thing is so fucking funny.
Yeah, that was crazy. I posted something from stand-up that I'd recently done in Kansas City, and people can go to Instagram and watch the bit. But then Rogan reposted it, Segura reposted it, Ari Shaffir reposted it, and I think Kreischer. I think they all reposted it. So it got like 5 million views. But then Rogan's people, the trolls, started going after me because they said I'd stolen it from South Park. And the bit, I won't even get into the bit because you can go to the Instagram and watch it.
Yeah, people can watch it.
But essentially, it was something about curing COVID by fucking a dog. And South Park, their big episode, it was the guy jerks off on pot and people smoking, and that cures it. So, first of all, not the same bit.
Not even the same ballpark.
Second of all, I then posted By the way, trolls, here's me on Rogan's podcast in April 2nd, 2020, riffing that bit with Rogan as we thought of it. And almost pretty close to how I ended up doing it on the Instagram post. And then here's South Park doing it 6 months later in September of 2020. And you know what? The trolls kept coming. They still kept saying it was like, and that's when you realize, like, when you've got 50% of Republicans who still believe that Trump won the election, and you go like, okay, 60 lawsuits that all failed. The attorney generals of every state where it was contested saying that they were convinced that Biden won the election, and you still get that percent. That's when you realize you just can't reason with people.
No, you can't win.
Once people get something in their head, you can't fucking change it.
Dude, that is totally true, and that's especially true of the trolls as well. Was that your first time people came at you with something like that? Or have you gone through some shit before?
I did Stern like 50 times, so whenever you did Stern, I would never go on Reddit. Reddit is pure evil. It is so hateful, and I just don't... I mean, look, I don't want to get into a discussion about trolls because they're not worth the time, but I think the key to this business, and the people that really do well have thick skin. And I don't know that mine's that thick, but when you get to a certain level, like I'm not at the level of getting 5 million views on a clip, and I see what comes with it is there's going to be trolls. And I've always said I crawled my way to the middle, and I'm staying right there. Like The middle is the sweet spot. I can go out to clubs, I can play all the A rooms, not big enough to play theaters. I'm not selling out every show, but I'm doing well. And I don't get recognized too much.
Dude, that's my dream. That what you just said there, right? Everything right there is my dream.
Yeah, you don't want to be too big.
Absolutely not.
I don't want to have to be on social media. Like, to be big these days, you really have to be working social media all the time.
Yeah.
And I post a new tweet like once every 3 weeks. Instagram, I put up videos, but I don't deal with Twitter.
I've opened for Sebastian and Segura a lot. They've been very good to me, and I've done a lot of big theaters with them. And it's just crazy to do a venue of like, I don't know, 10,000 people a night, and like they're all there to see you. And I'm like, man, I have no desire to be in that position. None.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure too. Pressure, and like, I mean, I love comedy and I love doing stand-up, but I don't think I want attention at that level either. I don't know if I could mentally handle that.
No, I don't think you can really. I mean, look, some people have managed to do that and have balance. I think Bert's a really good example. I think Tom's a really good example.
Yeah, they have families. They yeah.
But it's rare. I don't know that I could keep my balance because I guess I have a little anxiety. And I think it just jacks up your anxiety.
I'm for sure it does. I mean, I can't even imagine at that level. But before we talk about that kind of level, let's go. So you started in Boston, right? Let's go back to the beginning here for a second, because this is what I love getting out of people. You're from New York, but you started stand-up in Boston, right?
Yeah, I went to college in Boston, and so
BU?
Harvard.
Okay.
No, BU.
Right.
And I was. If you want to talk about the first time I did stand-up,
yeah. Well, before we do that, what got you into stand-up specifically? Did you watch it with like on television, like Carson and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I watched Carson every night, and I collected comedy. I have a pretty extensive comedy album collection that I've had since I started when I was probably about 10 or 11 years old.
Oh man!
And then I would go. I would get books. Like Bill Cosby's books and Dave Barry, like anybody who wrote comedy, I read everything.
And Dave Barry had a million
books.
Books.
Comedy in it, I just devoured. And then when I turned like 16, I got a fake ID and I started going to the clubs in New York. I'd go to the Improv and the Cellar, and I just really, and then of course it was the family business because my dad was a radio broadcaster. But he would host a lot of benefits or, anytime somebody would ask him to host something, he had a tuxedo and he'd put it on and he'd go out and he would essentially do stand up. He would tell funny stories. He would bust people's chops. He was just like in his glory. Like nothing made him happier than going out and doing and I don't even think they paid him. I remember one time I was standing next to him and he was doing a benefit for a Catholic school in the Bronx. And I would always go watch him. I loved watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy comes up to him. It was a priest. And the priest hands my father an envelope and he goes, here's for your effort tonight. And my father goes, I get $10,000 to do this. If that's not $10,000, then with my blessings, just keep it and I'm fine doing it. And I was like, what are you fucking nuts? That could have been $500 from the Catholics, no less. We've given them that much money.
I know, they take it.
And so I think I watched my dad do it, and I think I saw that it was possible. And I think I have AD. I know I have ADD, and I've always been attracted to bursts of excitement. I've always been a kid that would do any dare, anything to get my heart racing or scare myself, I was into doing. And stand-up was that thing. When I saw people do stand-up, I just thought, there is not a single thing in the world that is as intense and as creative as jumping up on stage in front of a room full of people. And so I was drawn
saying,
to
I'm
that
funny.
energy.
And saying, I'm funny.
Yeah, to say I deserve your total uninterrupted attention for the next period of time, that I am the only guy that gets to talk. I loved it.
Yeah, there is something special about that. So you had a fake ID. You were checking out shows before you started?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would go out and I would see guys like Richard Belzer and Paul Reiser, Seinfeld early on. Even guys that Rick Crum was the host at the Comedy Cellar, and he's still host at the Comedy Cellar all these years later. It was it was a pretty magic time and those guys would talk to you after the show. So like me and my friend would drive down and we would hang out after the show outside the club because we knew the comics would come out. And then we tried not to be annoying, but we would talk to them. And they were always very generous with their time. I remember Bill Grunfest was also the host. He was another host of the Cellar that used to talk to us. And I always, whenever somebody younger comes up to me now, I try to be generous, as you can tell from my treatment of you. Mm-hmm. I try to be generous because I know what it meant to me,
Absolutely. I mean, that stuff, you don't forget that kind of stuff. I can tell you the names of like a comic that gave me like $20 15 years ago just because I did like a guest set. You don't forget the little things like that ever.
Right.
So you go to Boston for college and then you start doing stand-up. So what got you to do that very first set? Where were you like, all right, I'm trying this?
Well, the first set was actually in high school. There was a senior talent show.
Okay.
Yeah. And I had this dream of doing it in the clubs in New York, but I just wasn't ready yet. And so I was like 17, and me and my buddy Frank, we got like a gram of Coke. And I remember we were chopping it up on the stainless steel slide at the playground of the lower school of where my school was, chopping up lines. And we drank a couple beers. And then he was supposed to do it with me, and he chickened out. He was going to do it separately. And I went up on stage, and it was unbelievable. I mean, part of it was the Coke, but the charge. And I was doing jokes about the teachers. Because there was a guy, Mr. Koskoris, who was the Western Civ teacher, and he was dating the art teacher. And so I was making fun of that because it was like the best kept secret of school. Like everybody knew it, but you weren't allowed to talk about it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was talking about how, there were a lot of gay teachers and they cut the microphone from backstage. So I put the microphone down. And I just yelled out the rest of my act to the auditorium. And I remember getting off stage and there was a stage door to the side, to the outside. And I remember going outside and jumping up and down with pumping my fists. There was a high at that moment that I don't think I'll ever achieve again. And that was it. And I kind of knew, like, I had no thoughts that this would be a career, but I knew I wanted to do it. I knew that I was drawn to it like a moth to a flame.
Dude, I know the exact same thing. After my very first set, I had this, it was like a euphoric rush that you've never experienced before. And you're like, what the fuck was that? I can't even describe what that was, but that was amazing. But you can't describe it.
Yeah.
That very first rush.
Yeah.
So did you have material prepared for that show? Or were you just riffing on the teachers and stuff?
I riffed on the teachers, and then I said I'm going to do a bit by Bob Newhart. And I did a Bob Newhart bit. And then I just did, like, my father was a member of the Friars Club. And so he was always coming home and telling me these great Borscht Belt jokes, you know, and I did a couple of those. And then I had some, like, early stand-up, like, just, you know, jokes that you would hear in a comedy club. It was like a mixture of stuff.
Yeah, we all like those rough first jokes that we all have where you just throw really half-ass ideas and thoughts down, but they don't quite make sense in a way, but they're still jokes to you.
It was overly conceptual. I was trying so hard to be clever. But I found that what worked was when I was riffing. And it's the same to this day. I was out doing stand-up last night, and I had a pocket full of new jokes, and I pulled them out on stage at the Comedy Store, and I was doing them. But the laughs were not as big as when I was just fucking around.
Just fucking around? Yeah. I've always admired that about you, too, because I hate talking to the crowd. I just hate it. I like, it's like I talk, you don't. We all go home. That's how I look at it. Uh-huh. But I've always loved when you would come in the crowd and play, like, Guess the Bra Size or Guess the Asian. Shit like that. Like, it never, even for me as a comic in the room watching comedy, that never got old because it was funny every single time because it always went in some direction and you always owned it, you know?
Yeah, it's so funny that I used to do that bit, and I did that bit on my last special, Guess the Asian, and I don't think you could do that today. I would go into the audience, and I'd approach Asian women, and I would guess their ethnicities with alarming accuracy.
Yes, you were pretty much always white. Always right from what I said, always white. What a great faux pas there.
Thank God I was always white, yeah.
So, all right, so then you really start doing it in Boston, right? A place called Stitches, I remember you saying?
Yeah, my freshman year, I went out and I did it. I did it freshman year, and then I didn't really do it again for a couple years, but it was the year that New England fans, Boston fans are fucking insane. So the first night I ever did comedy in a stand-up club was at Stitches Comedy Club, so named because people would get beat up there. And I performed on a Sunday night, and that afternoon, the Chicago Bears had beat the Patriots by like 35, 40 points. It was one of the biggest blowouts in Super Bowl history. And the club was half empty, and I had a bunch of my college friends were there, and I went up, and it was that same feeling. It was that same euphoria.
Oh, that was on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah,
that's funny that the club was even open in Boston on a Super Bowl where the Patriots were playing. Who the fuck would be there?
I know, and the show was called Mike Night, and they used to call it Comedy Hell. Because
what a great name.
Rough. Yeah, it was so rough. And the guy, George McDonald, used to host it. And he would start off the show and he'd go, "Welcome to Comedy Hell, where the pipe dreams of a handful of comedy bozos can soar as high as the lights on Broadway or crash and burn in that fiery pit known only as Comedy Hell."
Wow, you have that down to a T, don't you? I performed at Jimmy Kimmel's Club on Super Bowl Sunday, and I was dreading it all day. This was last year, 2020, right before COVID. And I'm like, this is fucking awful. We're in Vegas. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Best show of the entire week. Hands down.
Really?
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, I just had that feeling all day. Not dread, but you're like, oh, they're going to be drunk. They're going to be rowdy. I don't feel like dealing with this. Dude, they were such a great crowd, and I was blown away. I thanked them a couple times on stage. Like, I can't believe you guys are so great. I was expecting a nightmare.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes the most adverse conditions, you get a really good show, and after 9/11, everybody always said, like, I'm not gonna be able to do stand up for a while. I'm like, I can't wait to get back on stage. Like, people need to feel community and they need to laugh. And granted, the type of comedy you're gonna do is you're gonna have to make a judgment call on, but comedy is this thing that is it reacts to its environment, and you have to be able to read situations, and when you do, it's so gratifying. Like, sometimes you do a corporate date and you're like, they always pay you like 5 times as much for a corporate date as you would get for a club, because it can be so fucking horrible. But then it can also be like the kind of crowd where you go, I wish I had cameras and recorded this, because even though I'm standing under a tent next to a lake and you guys have been drinking since noon and I followed a magician, like, somehow it was the most magic set I've ever had.
Dude, isn't that crazy? And, I'm 17 years in. It's like, for everybody, every comic, everywhere, it still varies show to show, man. It is incredible. Like, I'm always amazed by all right, let's say you're doing an hour, 2 shows a night. That same hour can fucking kill, or you can eat it. Just 2 hours apart, early show and late show.
Yeah, and it's funny because you can't get jaded by that. I mean, it's so, like, New York comics always had a bad reputation of being like caustic and not really, like, coming from Boston where the crowds were packed. I was very fortunate. I started in the late 80s, early 90s, when the comedy boom was still going on. And you could walk into a club in any Chinese restaurant in fucking Ludlow, Mass, or in East Providence, Rhode Island, and you'd be at a pizza place or whatever, and it would be fucking packed, and the crowd was there to laugh. And so that's why you had all these comics come out of Boston at the time that I did, because it was like Malcolm Gladwell would call it, like an outlier. It was a situation like Silicon Valley was in the 80s. It was a place that spawned an industry. And so I came to New York and I was like, wow, why are these New York comics so fucking bitter? And how come nobody's trying to kill? Everybody's trying to survive, because they were used to half-filled rooms or less and hostile crowds. And so it was so much easier as a Boston comic to come to New York. And for like 3 years, I would split the week. I would spend the weekdays in New York and I'd spend the weekends in Boston, and I would just sleep on couches. And I was able to, like, kind of build up my self-esteem in Boston and write new material. And then I'd come to New York and the crowds were tougher, but I didn't have that Kevin Brennan attitude of like, I'm just going to fucking mumble and shit on people, which he still fucking has to this day.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, he totally does. That's the only way I've known him. You've known him
He's
longer than I have.
Like, you could put Kevin Brennan in Palestine right now, and he could do 10 minutes and it would fucking work, because he is just a soldier. He's just like the toughest comic. You cannot rattle Kevin Brennan.
Break him?
Yeah. But anyway, so I think starting in Boston at that time, you had a chance to, like, I mean, the guys that came up with Rogan and I were like best friends. Then you had Burr was just below us, along with Dane Cook. Louis C.K. was a couple years ahead of us. Maron was a couple years ahead of us.
Were Patrice
O'Neill was around the same time as Bill. Bobby Kelly. It was like, I'm forgetting people, but there was so many amazing comics coming out at that time.
Oh, see, I love hearing that shit. I mean, so this was, you said late 80s, right?
This was like 1990.
Okay, all right. So Were people like Stephen Wright and Don Gavin like still around then, or were they?
Stephen Wright was gone, but Gavin was the king. I mean,
Yeah,
Gavin is,
so funny.
for my money, the funniest comic I've ever seen in my life, and most of the country's never heard of him. And the same thing with Steve Sweeney, Mike Donovan. There's a bunch of Boston comics that I would put up against anybody, and they just never left Boston because they were making a good living. They had a nice following. They were able to play golf every day and sleep in their own beds, and they were like, why the fuck am I going to go live on a couch in LA and hope to get an audition for a pilot on a show that's not funny and make no money? They were like, why? Not everybody has to follow their dream. Some people have kind of like are living their dream.
Mm-hmm. That's an awesome way to look at it.
Yeah.
So how long until you started getting some work? Were you hitting open mics for a couple years, or did work kind of come quickly? Like decent paid work.
Like me and Joe for like 2 years. Me and Joe would be down at Stitches or Nick's Comedy Stop with a guy named Tom Cotter, Al Ducharme.
Oh, I know Tom. Yep. Oh, yep.
Mike McCarthy, and we would sign up for the open mics and then wait around to see if we got on, and if we didn't, we watched the other comics, and then we'd go out afterwards. During the day, we played softball 3 days a week in this park in Brookline, and it was like David Cross and Janine Garofalo and Louis C.K. and we were all out playing fucking softball, and then we'd get high a lot, go to movies. It was just, it'll never be as good as those first couple of years. And I wasn't making any money. For the first year I worked I started doing stand-up when I was a senior in college, and I was making a tiny bit of money, but not enough to live off of.
Yep, I know that.
So I worked as a banquet waiter at the Marriott in the mornings. I would set up the breakfast station, so I'd have to be there at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be out all night doing stand-up. But then I was able to, like, within a year, I was making a living, and I quit the day job because. And again, I hate to even say that out loud because I know there's so many comics starting out today that are great fucking comics that are throwing themselves into it 100%, and there just isn't that kind of money out there that was available back then. Yeah. But it was all within Boston. I didn't really have to go on the road. I was able to just, again, get as long as you had a driver's license, a lot of times the headliners in Boston, they all did so much coke and drank so much, they all lost their licenses. And so you would have to pick up the headliner and drive them to Maine or drive them to Rhode Island and then drive them home after the show. So, like, it was a question of, are you funny and do you have a driver's license?
I've been asked that several times in my early days. Or even people just hearing you have a car. Oh, you have a car? What are you doing on the 14th? You're right. Like, okay. Right. I see where this is going.
Yeah, there was a comic named Doug James, and that was the only way he got work, was driving other comics, and they started calling him Home James.
Does Doug James run a show in Huntington Beach, California?
Yes. Yeah.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. Funny comic, but, like, good driver.
Yeah. I've heard you mention before that how much your first Letterman appearance meant to you. How long in your career did you get that?
It was about 7 years. It was 1996, December 3rd, 1996.
Oh, you got the date. All right.
I had gone up to the Montreal Comedy Festival the summer before that, and the booker was up there and saw me and booked me on the show. And then I came in and I came in to do the show 3 times, and Jack Lemmon went long one time. I remember there was 3 different times. Like, the guest was doing well, so they would always cut the comic because you were act 7. You were the disposable act if somebody was doing really well. And the first time it happened, it was Jack Lemmon, and he actually came backstage and he apologized to me for going long, and I was like, holy shit. So I got this great picture of me and Jack Lemmon.
I've seen that picture, and I was going to bring that up because side note, I've always been a huge comedy nerd, and when I was a kid, I was obsessed with Grumpy Old Men and Matthau and Lemon. Like, yeah. So anyway, that was the first time you got bumped. Who else bumped you on Letterman?
I'm trying to think. It might have been Kevin Pollak another time. I think it was Kevin Pollak.
Okay, so we do have a grumpy old men theme here now.
Yeah, right. But when I finally did it, it was my father had died a couple years before, and he was my biggest fan and my biggest supporter, and he meant a lot to me. We were very close. And before I went on, I mean, I fucking have. I was canceled 3 times, so this set couldn't have been tighter. It was like I had been hammering it out in the clubs for fucking 5 months, and then I got on, and before I went on, it was Biff Henderson, the stage manager, was patting me on the back. He's like, "Okay, you got 30 seconds." And I thought of my dad, and I literally like looked up, and I was like thinking about my dad. I was like, "Okay, Dad, here we go." And I went out and just had the set of my life. I was just in the zone. I wasn't thinking about the jokes. I was aware that Letterman was over my back left shoulder, and that Paul Schaefer was on my right laughing, and that the crowd was just giving me applause breaks on every joke.
Dude, I rewatched that set this morning. You get applause on everything. It is such a fucking killer 5 or 6,
thanks,
whatever
man.
it is.
Yeah, thanks. And so I finished, and I was so moved. I got off stage, and I burst into tears. And the next guest coming on was Faith Hill, and she's got on big heels. She's tall, and she just walks over and she hugs me. She gives me this big, long hug. And I was like, is life going to get any better than this moment right here?
How long did you ride that high for after that set?
I was completely depressed the next day. I was crushed. Yeah. Took me a while to get over it. Yeah.
It was the opposite. Okay. I thought that's what, like, sometimes, when you have like a good show, you're like, oh man, I don't have a show for a week, but at least I ended on that high note and you can still carry that over,
Yeah. No, it was something that I had built up so much, and it was everything I hoped. And it really was this feeling of anticlimax of like, what now?
Okay, maybe in some weird note, I can relate to that. 10 years ago, I was like an avid runner, and I trained for a marathon, and I did one. I completed 26.2 miles, and when I crossed the finish line, I had no sense of gratification or euphoria. I was like, okay, I did it, and guess I'll walk to my car and figure out what I want for dinner now.
Well, as Steven Tyler said, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yep, bringing another Boston reference into it.
All right.
You did a weird gig years ago. You hosted the AVN Awards.
The porn awards.
That? Yeah, the porn awards. What was that like? I guess that's essentially a corporate gig, right?
Yeah. I mean, the guy that booked me, he said, "Hey man, we're interested in me because of the Stern connection." I think that, the AVNs was always on. They always had a presence on the Howard Stern show, and the Stern show was fascinated with the awards. And so because of going on there a lot, they said, we'd like to maybe book you to host it. So can we come out and see you do some stand-up? And so I wrote a ton of porn material. And they came out and saw me, and I had a good set. And then the guy said to me, "Okay, we're going to book you, but just know this. You're going to do 10 minutes at the beginning of the show. If you don't get them in the first 30 seconds, they're all going to start talking to each other, and they're going to ignore you for the entire 10 minutes." And so I knew I needed a killer opening joke. And so I came up with this joke where I said, "It's great to be here in Vegas for the porn awards. All the stars are out there. I was just walking past the gas station. I saw Ron Jeremy filling his own tank. And I'm pretty sure it was him, because halfway through filling it, he pulled it out and sprayed it all over the car." And I got him. And it's like there was 7,000 people in the audience, and it was being taped for Showtime. And they're all on coke, and there's cameras going through the crowd while you're on stage, and the women are all flashing their tits. But it was like I just kept at it. I was like shitting on people in the crowd. I kept it in the moment, and it was a blast.
Just beating them over the head. You got to, like, if you know you're going to lose their attention. And that's awesome you had a heads up on that, by the
Yeah.
way. As someone booking a show, that's an awesome heads up. And then you just know you have to just beat them over the head repeatedly.
Yeah. And then it was a very weird situation because I'm married and here I am hosting the Porn Awards and I'm the host. So it's like get invited to all the VIP parties and orgies and all this stuff. And so I go back. I co-hosted with Tara Patrick and we became friends. And so she said, "Hey, I'm having a little party at my hotel room." And so she's got a suite. And I go back there and her boyfriend / manager, there's a lot of that in porn, is
I can
this
imagine.
guy. He used to play basketball for UCLA, big dude. And I walk in the suite and everybody is fucking zoned out. And she's like, "Oh yeah, we're all on ecstasy. Do you want some?" And she held up this Altoids tin filled with ecstasy. And I said, "No, I'm good. Because I'm sober."
Mm-hmm.
So the boyfriend said, "No, you're going to take some." I said, "No, I'm not going to take any." He pinned me down, sat on my arms, and took one and stuck it in my mouth.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And meanwhile, I'm sitting there with like fucking women sitting there in their bra and panties, porn stars, and I have somebody stuffing ecstasy in my mouth. That would be a dream for any other guy.
Yeah, I think it's funny that you're in the situation like that, surrounded by naked porn stars, and the only other dude is on you.
Yeah, exactly.
It just seemed like such a weird show. Like I know Attell did it as well, and I'm blanking on
Bill Hicks did it. Sam Kinison did it.
Really? I didn't realize. Oh no, shit! I didn't know that at all.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, let me look it up.
That's pretty cool. So I really don't even listen to podcasts that much. I don't. Yeah, I have one, but I'm really not that much of a listener. But I do love Fitz Dog Radio because I love, especially when you have certain guests on, Attell, Brian Regan, Joey Diaz. I love listening to you guys talk about stand-up. And even like, I guess it's like sports radio. If I'm in the car driving 7 hours to a gig, it's a way for me to still talk shop even though I'm listening.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tell you.
Like, it's it's a way for me to stay in touch with people that I love, that I don't get to see enough. And so for me, the hardest part of the show is booking it because, you just never know who wants to do it. Some people approach me to do it, which is awkward because then there's certain people that I'm not that excited to have on as a guest, but they might be friends. Mm-hmm. And then there's people that I know like to do it once a year, like a guy like Kevin Nealon or Neil Brennan, like are always up for doing it because we just have fun.
Oh,
and
dude.
Then there's people somewhere in the middle where like I want to approach them, but I'm not sure if they want to do it. I never want to put people on the spot.
Yeah, I understand that. But when I listen to your podcast, I can tell when you're having fun. Like listening to you and Attell go back and forth is awesome. And I love just when maybe it even happened on this episode here. I love just like little bits of comedy knowledge or insights that come out of nowhere, like a comparison to something. And I feel like your podcast is full of those just in conversation. Nobody means to say anything monumental, but you're just chatting about a show and you're like, oh shit, that's a great point. Or like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Or what a weird way to phrase it, but I agree. Like, like little tidbits along the way we just have in conversation.
Yeah, I think that the general public has such a fascination with stand-up comedy right now. It's become like a real social kind of a flashpoint for this generation. They really are interested in stand-up. It used to be almost a shameful thing to do. And now people want to know everything about it. And so there's so many podcasts where people deconstruct stand-up, and you'd think that would be boring, but people seem to want to hear it.
Yeah, I love it. And I do love that you, I love the hotel question. I don't know why, maybe because I'm a road comic as well. I love when you ask your guests, like, what's the first thing you do when you get in your hotel room? I don't know why I find that fascinating, but I fucking do.
Did you hear the Brian Regan answer? It was really interesting because he was one of the first person that I asked. And he said, and he lit up when I asked him. He goes, okay, you ready for this? And he walked me through how he irons his socks and he brings He irons all his shirts, and he went into this great detail because he started sharing that he had OCD, and he had never talked about it before. It was like something that he kept very private. But because of that question, he kind of like explained his OCD. And then I don't know if you saw his last special, but
I did.
it was fucking amazing when he got into his OCD. It was super funny and personal and genuine. And I like to think that I sparked that a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome. Now that you mention that, I do remember him talking about the OCD stuff. What's been the craziest answer anybody's heard? Or sorry, anybody's ever said that you've asked that question?
I think it was a tell because he doesn't pack anything.
Where he had the butt. Okay, I can't believe you said that.
Everything.
He has to buy everything. Yep.
Yeah. Toothbrush, toothpaste. Like he just, and then he buys candy. He goes from the air before he gets to the hotel. He stops and he gets candy because he's like the candy man. He gives the waitresses, the door guys, the manager, everybody gets candy from David Tell. Yeah,
he'll buy like 15 pizzas for everybody. Yeah, he's such a great dude. I haven't seen or talked to Dave in a long time. And I remember hosting for him or featuring in Helium for him years ago. And he like lift up his pant leg to like scratch an itch. And he had like cigarettes, lotto tickets, and a newspaper stuffed in his socks. I swear to God. I was like, oh my God, my favorite comic is homeless. Like, I think about that all the time. He had a rolled up newspaper just in his sock. And not only that, this was in between shows, and I was like, he just did an hour of stand up with that shit in his socks.
Yeah. He's like a guy that's got it locked down. His life is locked down. You know, he's got his Indian cigarettes and his
American
Starbucks
spirits
coffee in his hand, or deli coffee. He doesn't even care. He drinks any shit coffee. Wears the same fucking outfit he's been wearing for 30 years that I've known him. Just jeans, black boots, t-shirt, jacket. That's it.
He'll wear a puffy coat on stage in July.
Yeah, right.
So are you on the road much this year? How's the rest of your 2021 shaping up?
I just did a few weeks, and now I'm doing some shows this weekend up in Ventura, but I think I'm going to mostly just hit LA clubs this summer and get a new hour together. I've got an hour that I recorded in Portland before the pandemic that I'm going to put out on YouTube. I put it out and I put out probably every Friday. I put out like a 1 or 2 minute clip from it on Instagram, so it's all out there. But now I'm going to actually release it as a full 1 hour special. So I need to spend the summer getting some new material together, and then in the fall I'll go back out.
Very cool. I'm bummed I missed you in Philly, but if you, I'll keep an eye out. Hopefully I can catch you at one of the Stress Factories or somewhere else close to Philly.
Yeah, it's like this summer is going to be weird because things are opening up, but a lot of the bigger comics are still playing the room, like comedy rooms.
Yeah, isn't that crazy when you look at a comedy club's calendar in a club, like a comedy club, and it's like Bob Saget, Chelsea Handler, Brian Regan. You're like, Jesus, they're all theater acts taking up club space.
Yeah, so that's why I think my summer is going to be slow, because that's my competition right now. Is I can't.
Yeah.
If it's between me and Bill Burr for the Green Bay Chuckle Hut, I think Bill Burr is going to get the week.
Did you do any Zoom stand up?
No.
I did one. It was for the San Francisco Punchline, and it was awesome. But
it's funny you asked that, because Saturday night I'm going to do it for the first time, and I think it's that thing. It's like called Best of San Francisco or something.
I think so, yeah. There was like, this is so weird to even just say, there was 120 people watching me on Zoom, and I could hear them laugh. And even though I was in the same bedroom I'm in now, it's fucking felt great. It was like real laughter. It was a real reaction in the moment, which we, react to. And it wasn't the same, but it was pretty awesome. I was very, very surprised.
Yeah. I figured I got to give it a shot. I didn't do it all year, but I'll try it.
Yeah, man, I think you'll enjoy it, especially if it's that one, because I had a really good time doing that. All right, I'm going to let you go here in a second, but I got to tell you, you had one of my favorite jokes I've ever heard, I think. And I don't even know if this was a staple in your act or just a one-off or something, but you said something that made me laugh so fucking hard. I think it was about Saudi Arabian women. maybe Saudi women, when they got the right to vote. Do you remember this joke?
Yeah, I think the joke is
they've been. You said Saudi women just got, and maybe it wasn't Saudi. Maybe I have the ethnicity wrong, but you said Saudi women just got the right to vote, which is ironic because they've been dressing like voting booths for centuries. And I fucking spit my drink out at the back table of Helium. And there's been a couple times in my career where I'm like, I can't wait till the show is over because I have to text 15 friends this immediately. And that was one of those jokes, dude.
That's hilarious. Yeah, that one is always that's always a risky one.
Okay, so that was a normal staple in the act for a while there.
Yeah, it goes in and out. It goes in the crowd. I'll drag it out once in a while.
Because as a comic too, like we can find somebody absolutely hysterical and not make a peep. We're like, oh, that's really funny, but we don't acknowledge it. So when a comic gives another comic like a gut reaction laugh, like that's fucking something.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, dude, that one would definitely did it for me. So, all right, dude, I'm going to let you go, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me. I've always been a fan, and I hope we cross paths eventually again soon.
Yeah, man, I always like to see you, and you're lucky to be in Philly. It really is a great town for stand-up. So many great comics have come out of there, and every time I'm there, I'm always impressed by the local guys that are doing it. And I know right now Jake Matera has a new special out.
Yep, he's one of my best friends. We actually went to high school together. He was 2 years behind me, same high school.
Yeah, I love that guy. He's super funny, and all you guys. I mean, it's always a pleasure to work there. And like some comics will bring openers with them on the road, and I do it if I'm working a town I've never heard of and whatever. But like when I go to Philly or Denver or San Francisco, I know that there's a really strong local scene, and I want to support those comics and see who's good. So, yeah.
Speaking of Philly comics, real quick. Wasn't your dad a fan of the legendary Wid?
Yes. Wow. How did you know that? That's a good pull.
I saw Wid 2 weeks ago, and he has another Philly comic, John Kensel, a very good friend, and John mentioned it, but I remember hearing that before. Did you mention Wid in your book? I don't remember, but somehow, I don't know. I remember that from way back.
Yeah, my dad, in his infinite genius as a radio guy, had a prop comic come on all the time.
Mm-hmm. Wid is great, man. I still see him from time to time, and he's still another comic that makes me gut laugh because
I fucking love Wid. He is, dude, and he's come to my shows in Philly sometimes. He's a very nice guy.
I mean, he has new jokes all the time. I mean, he'll hold up a piece of PVC pipe and do 40 jokes on it. Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible.
I also I had Dan Cummins on my podcast this week, and we were talking about you a little bit.
Oh, dude, Dan has been so good to me the past couple years, man. He's awesome. Oh, I cannot wait to check that episode out.
Yeah.
What did he say? Anything good? Or should I wait for you guys? Or should I wait to hear the shit talk?
I don't know if it was on the air or off the air, to be honest, when we talked about you. But he said nice things, and
he's a great dude.
We're just talking about different people that we bring on the road and stuff. He was singing your praises. Very cool. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, man. Well, I will tell the Wid you said hey, and I hope we see each other soon.
All right, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem.